Hello and welcome to the fourth and final lesson on Zoella, part of the online media section of component 2 of the exam. This, as I said, is on industry, having covered already media language, representations and audiences. And in this session we will aim to apply industry theory to Zoella regarding ownership and context, and evaluate the impact of new digital technologies on media regulation. And before we go on, just want a quick reminder that we covered quite a lot in the audiences session on Zoella's success and sort of really covered quite a lot of facts regarding how many followers she has, what is her social media presence, what different content does she have. Obviously we looked at that in media language and representations as well. Just make sure you do have all that information, and really at this stage of studying you should be following her on whatever social media platforms you are part of. You should be aware of her changing content, and really be super familiar with both her website and the different vlogs she has and the different channels and Instagram pages and all of it, okay? The exam board will know if you're an expert on her content and up to date with how it evolves and changes and what it's used for. So keep those facts, figures and information handy. Revisit the site regularly, even once we've finished studying this. Anyway, on with the lesson. First of all, we're going to look at online media and the sort of context behind it. Think back to the David Gauntlet video we looked at in the audiences lesson when he discussed Web 2.0 and the differentiation between the media, what he calls the media gods, and the little people, and how the role of the media has changed as has the role of the audience. Traditionally, decisions regarding what does and does not get produced, published, distributed or broadcast have been made by media professionals who act as what we call gatekeepers to information. Now, of course, technological changes in society throughout the past 20-25 years has meant that all an individual needs is a camera or a webcam and the internet, and this has led to a huge growth in user-generated content. Who does this remind us of? Yes, of course, Zoella. So get these definitions down if you don't know them already. Well, just good practice, part of a good vocabulary and glossary. A gatekeeper is a person or organisation that is involved some way in filtering content. And this term, which is usually abbreviated to UGC, user-generated content. Pretty self-explanatory, but material created by everyday users rather than professionals working on media organisations. So let's talk a little bit more about this in relation to theory. And of course, who better to look at this than David Hesmagulch and his cultural industries. So this idea that technological changes mean that all an individual needs is a camera or a webcam and the internet has led to a huge growth in user-generated content. Absolutely. Anyone with a computer can put their own videos on YouTube these days. So how does this relate to Hesmagulch? Well, he says that the radical potential of the internet has been contained to some extent by the incorporation of large profit-orientated set of cultural industries. Okay, so he's kind of saying that the little person, the ordinary people, don't stand a chance to reinvent the internet, because they'll always be somewhat squashed by the big corporate industries. Well, does this point that we've made about user-generated content refute Hesmagulch's assertions about the internet being stifled by corporate interests? What do we think? Has Web 2.0 and the technologies that people have available to them every day, do the social media platforms that allow people to be creative and produce their own media, does this refute David Hesmagulch's points? What do you think? And of course, we have to relate this to Zoe herself. From all we've studied so far about Zoella's content, what is your instinctive view on how this point can be related to Zoella's content? In other words, what do you think? Is Zoella proof that the corporate entity, the big companies, the big corporations are no longer stifling the creativity online. And in fact, anybody can be up there with the media giants, no matter who you are. Or, alternatively, is Zoella part of the machine? Is she actually one of the corporate elements, one of the profit-orientated set of cultural industries that David Hesmagulch is talking about? Has she actually formulated her own styles to such that it's so conventional that it might mean that other vloggers that do things a little bit different might not have made it, because essentially Zoella has set the rules? What do you think? What is your instinct on this? How can we relate Hesmagulch's final point to Zoella's content? Let's keep going and look at the economic context. Now, this shift to non-professional content creators could be seen as a starting place to mark the democratization of the media. However, don't be fooled. The big corporate elements are exploiting these new platforms in order to reinforce their dominance. Channels or vlogs with large numbers of subscribers like Zoella can be highly lucrative, as advertisers and big organisations use these formats to target specific audiences. YouTubers, of course, can also monetize their channel. A couple of quick definitions of words that I've used that you might not have known. Democratization, making something accessible to everyone. Monetization, the process through which a product or a service, such as a blog or a vlog, is converted into a source of commercial revenue. So, let's talk a bit more about monetization on YouTube and how money can be made. One method of monetizing content is to run adverts, of course. YouTubers can apply to join the YouTube Partner Program. And so I'm going to give you a bit more information about how that works. So here's the overview of the YouTube Partner Program. Take a moment to read this and just summarize what it is. So let's have a look at what this means in a little bit more detail. The adverts that are featured on a YouTuber's channel can take various forms that you'll probably be aware of because they're so annoying. They can be display ads or banners which appear beside or below the video being played. They can be overlay ads which are placed on top of the video content in the lower portion of the video. And they can be video ads before, during or after the video. They may be skippable or non-skippable. And I think now YouTube pretty much has it's a policy that pretty much all videos will have at least one, sometimes two ads before you can watch the video you're looking for. Of course, the other main way of gaining revenue from YouTube is sponsorship. It's another important source of revenue for vloggers and bloggers, and that's of course where content creators are paid to review, endorse or promote certain brands. And if you remember back to the first ever video, the 15 things you probably didn't know about Zoe Sugg, if you remember, that revealed just how lucrative some of her sponsorship deals were. Okay, let's do a bit of research, go back to some of those old things. 10 minutes. Take some 10 minutes to find out how is Zoella using the web to rake in the cash. Find the evidence, make notes of it. Okay, so inevitably we're going to relate all these economic contextual stuff to theory again, and it's Mr. Hesmagulch who we can look at. But this time we'll look at these first 2 points he makes. If you remember, he talks about the fact that the idea that cultural industry companies try to minimise risk and maximise audiences through, first of all, vertical and horizontal integration, if they're a big enough company, but also by formatting their cultural products through the use of stars, genres, franchises and so on. And of course, he says that the largest companies or conglomerates now operate across a number of different cultural industries. Well, you don't have to be a huge organisation to follow the model of those companies. So where is the proof of those 2 points from Zoella's content? Okay, you should know Zoella's content well enough now to think of how she capitalizes on her own branding. Okay, where does she to prove Hesmond-Gulch's first point, where can you say Zoella has formatted or used media language, shall we say, within her own content to make herself more popular? Where does she rely on an audience knowing what she has done before, in other words? And the second point, what do you know about her content and what she produces to suggest that she operates across a number of different cultural industries? Well, hopefully you found that fairly simple. I mean, whilst Zoella's content has changed and evolved, and we looked at that regarding representations, and of course you can still visit the archived stuff, she does rely on the familiarity that people have from her content. In fact, if you look at her YouTube pages, she now has two. The Zoella and the Zoe saga, or more Zoella as it was, which goes kind of behind the scenes. So she's always giving us a bit more of who she is and what she does, but it does rely on that brand recognition, okay, in the same way that a franchise would in movies. As for the second question, of course, she's involved in a huge amount of convergence, okay? She sells and markets and lots of other products, and they all form part of the Zoella brand. But we're going to switch theories now and move over for a little while to look at regulation. And of course, our theorists for regulation are Sonia Livingston and Peter Lunt. And in the summary of their ideas, we have this paragraph. The idea that the increasing power of global media corporations, together with the rise of convergent media and technologies and transformations in the production, distribution and marketing of digital technologies, have placed traditional approaches to media regulation at risk. What does this mean? Well, it is a very long-winded way of saying the internet throws a spanner in the works when it comes to regulation. Of course it does. It makes it incredibly difficult to regulate. The internet is such a strange, fluid, diverse, also, technological place that's always changing. So what for you are the biggest reasons why the internet is such a headache when it does come to regulation? Just give yourself 3 reasons to write down why is it so difficult to regulate the internet. Now, online media is more difficult to regulate than traditional media platforms such as television or film. And of course, there's a lot of debate as to whose responsibility it is. In fact, that might have been one of the things that you said in your 3 points. Is it the internet service provider, the person who's kind of getting the internet to the user? Is it the companies that own social media platforms such as Twitter and Instagram? And of course, that's come into sharper focus with Twitter banning certain high-profile users over the past few months. And of course, it does raise a question that if the people providing the media and the content can't be held responsible for regulation, is there a need for an independent body? Well, let's have a look at what YouTube does in particular. They have what they call community guidelines, which need to be adhered to. And they make this quite clear in their sort of policies of safety. Now, before we look at those specifically, just, what in your mind, what aspects of online safety would you expect to be regulated by YouTube as a site? Well, let's take a look at them. So take a moment to have a read and make some notes on these. And you can investigate them further by watching videos of this as well. I'd like you to make 2 lists. 1, areas that may be difficult in your opinion due to the nature of the internet. And second one, areas that you feel may bring up debates regarding the freedom of speech versus the argument of protecting audiences, which of course is the other point that Livingston and Lunt make, that there is always this conflict whenever we talk about regulation as to whether someone's content being regulated is actually removing their freedom of speech. So which areas do you feel, as you look through these areas of regulation, do you feel might be more difficult to regulate? And which areas do you think raises the debate of freedom of speech versus protecting audiences? So continue making your lists. Okay, let's move on. So, there's not just YouTube or the service providers that have to be worried about what is going on regarding violence or bad language or sexual content and so on. It's also important that the Advertising Standards Authority are involved. And bloggers and vloggers are subject to their regulation as well. They must ensure they operate under what's called the CAP code. So here is a screenshot from the ASA's information about CAP code. And spend 10 minutes or so just looking at some of these scenarios on the ASA's website. So I'll just quickly show you a video that is out there for vloggers and bloggers to make sure they stay within that CAP code when they're promoting goods and are sponsored by different companies. Make notes whilst you're watching the video and think about what areas conform to what you were expecting and what areas surprise you, and is there anything missing that you would expect to be here? Anyway, watch the video and make notes on those 3 areas.
At the Committee of Advertising Practice, CAP, we write the rules that UK advertisers across media, including online, have to follow. If you make online editorial content, such as a vlog or a blog, this video is relevant to you. When brands and content creators are considering how to work together, they need to be clear what the nature of their relationship is and how to communicate that to the viewer or reader. Here are some of the key points to remember. When is an ad an ad? If you're paid to say something about a product or service and the company tells you what to say, it's advertising. And if you're advertising, you must make that clear to followers. So, when and how should you signpost that you're advertising? If the whole video or blog is paid for and controlled by a brand, then it should be labelled upfront as an ad. Using labels such as ad, ad feature, advertorial, or similar are good ways of making followers aware before they engage with it. For example, using it in the title or thumbnail are simple ways of doing this. Commercial breaks within content. If most of the content is your own opinion, but a dedicated section is paid for and controlled by a brand, then it just needs to be made clear when the advertising starts. On-screen text stating ad or ad feature is one way of doing this. An even simpler way is to explain to your viewers at which point you've been paid to talk about a product. Product placement. If during the course of your usual content you've been paid to feature a product instead of one you choose yourself, this needs to be clear. You don't have to label the whole thing, but on-screen text stating ad or product placement is a quick and easy way to let followers know this part of your content has a commercial message. We're here to help you get your ads right. If in doubt, contact our friendly team for free, expert advice on the rules. For more examples, see our guidance and follow us on Twitter.
What a lovely little tune. There we go. So there you go. It's roughly how the CAP works. So, what is the bottom line when it comes to this? This is a quote from the ASA's website. It's perfectly legitimate for vloggers to enter a commercial relationship and be paid to promote a product, service or brand. We're not here to regulate the relationship or to stop vloggers earning money. But when that commercial relationship is in place, then the onus is on the advertiser and by extension the vlogger to be upfront about it and clearly disclose that the fact that they are advertising. Ultimately, it pays to be honest. Vloggers build their fan base on the originality and authenticity of the material they produce. It's potentially damaging to their reputation to be found to have hidden the fact that the content they're producing is paid for and controlled by an advertiser. Wise words indeed, and obviously quite true. And it's clear that they put the onus on the blogger or vlogger in that instance, okay, and sort of issuing this kind of warning that people will be let down if you're not honest. But we have to think about this from a kind of sort of industry point of view. What would you consider to be more important, really? Do you think it should come from the host site, this regulation? Okay, so if you're putting your videos on YouTube, is it YouTube that has the responsibility to make sure that people aren't being exploited? Okay, or is it the regulation of advertising and promotions to avoid exploiting people from a financial perspective? Okay, so what do we think? Is it the regulation of content, such as the YouTube guidelines we saw, or is it regulation of advertising? Which for you is the more important of these two? And let's take the debate on a step further. Is regulation of either of these things a form of censorship? Okay, does having regulators online take away from the ethos and that aforementioned democratization of online content? If the internet is supposed to be this kind of big free place where anyone can have their say, being told that you have to be honest about advertising, being told that you can't use certain language or you can't make whatever content you want, is that taking away from that ethos of online content? Is it censorship? Okay, obviously both of those things are entirely opinion-based, but it's important that you think about them to engage. And if you can do that, then you begin to better understand what Livingston and Lunt are talking about. And in fact, you're actually engaging with the debate that they're having. But let's take a step back for the last couple of slides to talk about Zoella and her online domination. Good way of knowing how she's getting on. Visit this website, trackalytics.com, to find out the latest stats on her YouTube channels. It's a good website for finding out media and website statistics. Just enter the YouTube name and the most recent data appears. So to continue our quest to find out how successful she is, collect together a sort of, if you like, a fact file of all of her successes. So we've already discussed that the brand of Zoella Fairmount, but of course it's worth just finishing off by thinking about and mentioning that Zoe Sugg makes a substantial income through her branded merchandise. Although it has to be said, she has avoided the old branded hoodie or necklace, unlike boyfriend Alfie, who is not a Tory, apparently. But through affiliate links in her shop and her vlogs, her Zoella beauty range, her books, Zoella has extended her brand across a range of different platforms. And as we said earlier, this is known as convergence, a word that you should almost certainly be using in essays about Zoella and her success. So when Zoella blogs, vlogs, anything that content she produces are used to promote her beauty products or books, this is known as synergy, another term you should be using plenty of times. Through this form of cross-production, or promotion, readers of Zoella's blogs will be encouraged to read her books, and vice versa. This, of course, is mutually beneficial. So we're at a stage now where Zoella isn't just having to make, a disclosure every time she's trying to sell, a bag or a makeup or some kind of clothing. She's now in a position where she produces the stuff. And so actually her content is advertising itself. The brand reinforces the brand. So what do you think about this? Is Zoella following the rules? Should more be done to ensure that her audience are not exploited? Or again, is this an infringement on free speech? Have a think about these things, okay? Have a good look round her website. try and find evidence of how often she promotes her own branding and her own products. Okay, has the website become little more than a big shop front for the produce of hers that you can buy? Has the vlog lost its integrity? And as we've talked about previously in other lessons, where is the personal stuff, the vlogs and blogs about mental health, would a cynic say that all of that gives it the sheen of relatability and the kind of realism of authenticity, the stamp that makes it acceptable and real? Or is that little more than a cover for a huge empire of advertising lifestyle products and teenage novels? Only you can decide that, but you can only decide it if you've got the evidence and you can analyse her content to prove that. So go back, have a look around, think about all the things we've talked about regarding cultural industries and how she makes her money, regarding regulation and whether she's exploiting her audience or whether she's following the rules. And that pretty much sums up everything you'd need to know about Zoella and industry. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Do get Girl Online, it's a cracking read. And we'll see you again. Bye-bye.